Hello and welcome to this tutorial for users of Microsoft Excel 2016 for the Mac. In this tutorial we're looking at automating spreadsheets again, and here we're looking at creating and using macros. A macro is basically a series of actions that can be combined into a single keyboard shortcut or a button that you can click. And I can illustrate that much more easily by actually creating a macro. So let's just say, for example, I would like to have a simple keyboard shortcut that applies a format to my spreadsheet titles. And before you record the macro, it's a good idea to have the steps planned out in advance. And I've done that here for my title format macro. So if I bring that text box into view there, you'll see I've got three basic steps. Change the font size to 16 point, color to dark blue, and change the font type to Arial. And if I click on the title at the moment, you'll see the color is black, the font size is 14, and the font type is Calibri. So I'll be changing those three elements with the macro. Now to record the macro, you go to the View tab, and over on the right you'll see the macro section with two buttons, View Macros and Record Macro. I'm going to click on Record Macro. The first thing I need to do is give a name to my macro, and I'm going to call it Title Format. I've typed that as a single word because one important rule is that you cannot have spaces in a macro name. I'm going to store the macro in the current workbook, which is what you would typically do, and you can also apply a keyboard shortcut. And you can see you have the two keys already selected for you, so Option, Command are the two keys you must use in the keyboard shortcut, and I'm going to set a letter G as the other part of my keyboard shortcut to activate the macro. Now you have to be careful here in that the key you choose may conflict with an existing shortcut, in which case you would have to come back and choose a different letter, but I'm pretty sure that G will be okay. I finally also have the option to add a description, which I'm not going to bother with just for now. I'll simply click OK. And if you look back in the macro section, you'll see we now have a stop recording button. So the macro is currently recording. One important thing to keep in mind is that it's not time dependent. So it doesn't matter whether I take 5 minutes or 5 hours to record the macro. The only thing that Excel does is record the different steps that I take. It doesn't matter how long I take between those steps. So if you need a bit of thinking time as you create the macro, don't worry about it. That won't impact how the macro eventually runs. So a title cell is already selected. Font size is going to be 16. So let's go to the Home tab and set 16 point as the font. The color is dark blue, so I click on the font color button and choose a dark blue shade there. And finally the font type is Arial, so go to the font drop down there, go to Arial and just choose the first option, the standard Arial font. So those are all the steps of my macro. If I go back to the View tab, I can now click the Stop Recording button. When you stop recording, there's no particular fanfare, but if I go to the View Macros button, you'll see there that title format is in my macro list. I'll just cancel that for now and go back to the Home tab again. And what I'm going to do here is click on the Ticket Sales Tracker label there, click on the Format Painter, and then click onto the title so I apply a completely different format. And now I'm going to format this title using my macro. So if I come back to the View tab first of all, click on the View Macros dialog, and then I'm going to select title format. Bottom right there you see we have the Run button. So if I click on Run, there you go, you see the format applied automatically. Now I'm going to test my keyboard shortcut as well. So if I come back to that Ticket Sales Tracker title, go to the Home tab and reformat the spreadsheet title again. So the keyboard shortcut, remember, is Option, Command and G as a combination. So if I type that keyboard shortcut, you see again there the format instantly applied. So there's a very simple example of using a macro. It's a way of combining multiple tasks on a spreadsheet into a single action, which might be a keyboard shortcut. It could be clicking the Run button from the macro dialog box, or you can actually assign that macro to a button on the spreadsheet, and that's what we're going to do now. First of all, I'll delete that text box because I no longer need it, so just click on the edge there, press delete. To apply a macro to a button on the spreadsheet, you'll need a particular toolbar that usually isn't visible. It's called the Developer Toolbar, and as you can see here, I don't have it at the moment. So first of all, I'll show you how to get the Developer Toolbar, and that is to go to the top left of the window. You'll see these shortcut buttons and you'll also see a small drop down arrow, and if you just hover your mouse over it, it says Customize Quick Access Toolbar. Click on that and come to the bottom and click More Commands. That brings up the ribbon and toolbar dialog. Click on the ribbon option and then come down to the bottom. There's a box on the right hand side there, and at the bottom you will find the word developer. Just put a tick into that box and click Save. And if your Excel Preferences dialog appears, simply close that down. And you'll see the developer option in the toolbar there, so click on that. And you'll see here you have the control section, and the button that I'm interested in is on the left of that section. And a bit further left you'll also see we have the macros and record macros buttons as well. I'm going to record a couple of macros, and what those macros will do is apply different sort and filter options to the table. I will then assign those macros to worksheet buttons that I can simply press to activate the macro. The first macro will simply apply the December filter to the screening month column. So if I come back to the developer toolbar, click record macro, I'll delete the existing name and I'm just going to call this December. I'm not going to set a shortcut key here because obviously I'm going to assign the macro to a button, so I'll simply click OK. And now the macro is recording, and all I need to do is take whatever actions I want for this macro, and that's simply to click on the filter for screening month, remove the Select All check, click December, and then close the filter dialog. And I'm also going to apply a sort to the movie column there, so I'm going to sort that A to Z. So if I come to the Data tab, I can click on the A to Z sort, and that completes the steps that I want for the macro. So come back to the Developer tab and click on Stop Recording. Now I'm going to clear all the filters off the table, so come back to the Data tab and go to the Sort and Filter section, click on the Clear button, and that removes all the filters. Just check that the table is sorted on the cell code order, which it is. Come back to the Developer tab again, and now I'm going to record a second macro that will show me the sales by Fred. So click Record Macro, and the name for this one, as you might guess, is going to be Fred. I'll simply click OK. And the steps for this macro are first to filter by the name Fred, so again remove the Select All check, click Fred, close the dialog, and I'm going to apply a sort here to the ticket quantity column, and this time high to low, so go to the Data tab, choose the high to low sort option. So there I've got Fred's name filtered and his ticket sales highest to lowest. And again that completes the steps for that macro, so go back to the Developer tab and click Stop Recording. Now I'm going to record one more macro, and that macro is going to be the one that clears the table. So when I've clicked one of the buttons to apply a filter, I'd like another button to be able to reset the table to its original condition. So again I'm going to click on Record Macro, and this one I'm going to call Reset Table. I'll just press the Enter key this time, and we're now recording. And here all I need to do is first go to the Data tab, click on the Clear button, and I also want to make sure that my sale code column is sorted correctly as well. So I click in the sale code column and choose A to Z or small to large sort. Click that button, and there's my table back in its original condition. I can then go to the Developer tab, stop that macro, and we've completed our 3 macros. If I click on the Macros button there to view the macros, and in the dialog box you can see there the macros I've just created, December, Fred, and Reset Table, and of course the earlier macro I created as well. So I'm going to cancel that for now, and I'm going to allocate those 3 new macros to buttons and position those buttons just above the table. But before I do that, I'm going to go to the View tab and click Unfreeze Panes, so the table no longer has the frozen section at the top. And the reason for that is that I've encountered some problems when assigning macros to buttons if I place those buttons or create those buttons in the area that's actually locked at the top of the screen or in the frozen part of the spreadsheet. This might not happen in your case, but it's something I've experienced, and it's not really a big problem to unfreeze the table, create the buttons, and then freeze the table again later on. So that's what I'm going to do. So with that done, I'll come back to the Developer tab, and now I'm going to go to the button option there, or the button that's in the control section on the Developer tab. Just click on that and then come back to the spreadsheet, and I'm going to draw a box above the screening month column there. So click and drag to draw, release the mouse button, And when I do that, I get a new dialog box that says Assign Macro. And here I want to assign the December macro. So click December, click OK. And at the moment the button has a default name. It's called button 16 in this case, which I don't want. So I'm going to click at the beginning of that label. Just press delete on the keyboard to remove it and type December, because that is the action that will occur when somebody presses the button. And with that done, I'll simply click away from the button, and that now is active. And if I click on that, the macro is run and the screening month is filtered to show December. So let's just go to the Data tab and choose Clear, then come back to Developer, and I'll create my second button. So again, click on the button option there in the control section, and this time I'm going to draw a button above Sold By. So to click and drag again. When I release the mouse button, we get again the Assign Macro list, and this time I'm going to click on Fred, click OK. Again, I'll need to rename that, so just click at the beginning of the existing label, delete on the keyboard and type Fred. And again, just click away from that button there. And finally, I'm going to create a button that will reset the table. So click on Button, and this time I'll draw that one above the total sales column. So again, draw the box, release the mouse button, and assign the macro, this time Reset Table. Click OK, and again relabel that to something a bit more meaningful. I'm going to call that one Reset. Again, just click away there. So that I've set up my 3 macro buttons. I'm going to refreeze the table now. So if I come and click into cell A5, go to the View tab, and I'll click on Freeze Panes. And that then sets the table so the column headers are frozen. And now let's test our 3 macros. So the first one, if I click, we've already seen we get December. If I reset the table first of all, and now click on the Fred macro, and of course that filters to show me Fred sales, and of course ticket quantity as well is automatically sorted high to low. And when I finish my analysis of Fred's ticket sales, simply click the reset button and the table is back where I started. So there's a nice example of how you can use macros to work with a table of data, assign those macros to buttons, and make the task of working with the table easier for your users. To conclude, I just want to show you how you save a spreadsheet with macros. And if I go to the File menu, and this time click Save As, it's important that when you save spreadsheets with macros contained, that you save it in this particular file format, so it's a macro-enabled workbook. If I click on the drop down there, you can see the standard Excel format is XLSX, but in the specialty formats, you'll see we have Excel macro-enabled workbook XLSM, and that's what you need to save your workbook as if it contains macros. So I'll click on Save here to save the changes. It's got a warning to say I'm going to replace an existing file, so click Replace. And now I'll close that file, so click on the File menu, choose Close, and now I'm going to reopen that workbook and just show you what happens when you open a macro-enabled workbook. And you see there my macro-enabled spreadsheet. And if you look closely, you'll notice that the icon is very slightly different to a standard spreadsheet. But if I click on the Open button now, you'll notice I get a warning box. And the reason I get this warning is that a macro could potentially be something harmful to my computer, so for example a virus. Open the spreadsheet only if you trust the source. Well, as I created it, I trust the source, so I can simply click Enable Macros and the spreadsheet opens and I have my macros available, which I can demonstrate by clicking my December macro and just proving they all still work perfectly. That concludes this tutorial. I hope you found some things in there that are useful and that you can apply to the spreadsheets that you're working on. But in the meantime, thank you for watching.